morning Philippines, good morning Calamba. Live from the station that brings you the latest and most credible news on air, keeping CalSci updated. And this is TTPP 66.6 Radio.
I'm Zane Hardinero.
And I'm Denise Mendoza. And this is TTPP Radio.
Because it all started when he was buying pandesal every morning in the bakery near the great Spanish house where his mestiza classmate Ida lived and where he began to fall in love with her. Now, let's start the story. Dear Denden, I was in bed by 10 and up by 5, and thus was ready for one more day of my 14th year, unless grandmother had forgotten the 15 centavos for the baker down Progreso Street, and how I enjoyed jingling those coins in my pocket, that would in the empty fruit jar in the cupboard.
Yes, grandmother forgot it. Now I have money in my pocket. What can I do for you? Can I buy your favorite bread, pandesal? Here, this just cost 15 centavos. It really smells so good. Oh, bread rolls. I almost forgotten that those are Grandma's favorite. If that's so, then buy now. They're still fresh from the oven. Oh, even I want to, but I don't have money anymore. That's easy. Why don't we equally divide your money at these two breads? 6 cents for the pandesal and 9 cents for the bread rolls. If it's okay with you. Sure, thank you. Then I went home. While walking, I said, "The bread of salt, how did it get that name? From where did its flavor come? Through what secret action of flour and yeast?" At the risk of being jostled from the counter by early buyers, I would push my way into the shop so that I might watch the women who, stripped to the waist, worked their long flat wooden spades in and out of the glowing maw of the oven. Why did the bread came not brown in the size of my little fist? And why did it have a pair of lips convulsed into a painful frown? Well, I knew how grandmother would not mind if I nibbled away at one piece. Perhaps I might even eat two, to be charged later against my share at the table. But that would be betraying a trust, and so, indeed, I kept my purchase intact. To guard it from harm, I watched my steps and avoided the dark street comers. For my reward, I had only to look in the direction of the seawall and the 50 yards or so of riverbed beyond it, where an old Spaniard's house stood. At low tide, when the bed was dry and the rocks glinted with broken bottles, the stone fence of the Spaniard's compound set off the house as if it was a castle. Sunrise brought a wash of silver upon the roofs of the laundry and the garden sheds which had been built low and close to the fence. On dull mornings the light dripped from the bamboo screen which covered the veranda and hung some 4 or 5 yards from the ground. Unless it was August, when the damp northeast monsoon had to be kept away from the rooms, 3 servants raised the screen promptly at 6:30 until it was completely hidden under the veranda eaves. From the sound of the pulleys, I knew it was time to set out for school. It was in his service as a coconut plantation overseer that grandfather had spent the last 30 years of his life. Grandmother had been widowed 3 years now. I often wondered whether I was being depended upon to spend the years ahead in the service of this great house. One day, I learned that Ida, a classmate in high school, was the old Spaniard's niece. All my doubts disappeared. It was as if before his death, grandfather had spoken to me about her, concealing the seriousness of the matter by putting it over as a joke. If now I kept true to the virtues, she would step out of her bedroom ostensibly to say, "Good morning," to her uncle. Her real purpose, I knew, was to reveal thus her assent to my desire.
On quiet mornings, I imagined the patter of her shoes upon the wooden veranda floor as a further sign, and I would hurry off to school. Come, let's go to school together.
Okay.
Taking the route she had fixed for me past the post office, the town plaza, and the church, the health center east of the plaza, and at last the school grounds, I asked myself whether I would be the height of rudeness, enough that in her blue skirt and white midi, she would be half a block ahead and, from that distance perhaps, throw a glance in my direction to bestow upon my heart a deserved and abundant blessing. I believe it was but right that, in some such way as this, her mission in my life was disguised. It was perhaps on my violin that her name wrote such a tender spell. Maestro Antonino remarked the dexterity of my stubby fingers. Quickly I raced through a lard until I had all but committed 2/3 of the book to memory. My short brown arm learned at last to draw the bow with grace. Sometimes when practicing my scales in the early evening, I wondered if the sea wind carrying the struggling notes across the pebbled river did not transform them into Schubert's serenade. Maybe it's just the audience. I looked around quickly but could not see her. As I retired to my place in the orchestra, I heard Pete Saez, the trombone player, call my name. Pete pressed my arm. He had for some time now been asking me to join the Minvelus Orchestra, his private band. He was 22. I was perhaps too young to be going around with him. He earned his school fees and supported his mother, hiring out his band at least 3 or 4 times a month. My head began to whirl. On the stage, in front of us, the principal had begun a speech about America. Nothing he could say about the Pilgrim Fathers and the American custom of feasting on turkey seemed interesting. I thought of the money I would earn. For several days now I had but one wish, to buy a box of linen stationery. At night, when the house was quiet, I would fill the sheets with words that would tell Aida how much I adored her. One of these mornings, perhaps before school closed for the holidays, I would borrow her algebra book, and there, upon a good page full of equations, there I would slip my message, tenderly pressing the leaves of the book. She would perhaps never write back. Neither by post nor by hand would a reply reach me. But no matter, it would be a silence full of voices. That night, I dreamed I had returned from a tour of the world's music centers. The newspapers of Manila had been generous with praise. I saw my picture on the cover of a magazine. A writer had described how many years ago I used to trudge the streets of Buena Vista with my violin in a battered black cardboard case. In New York, he reported a millionaire had offered me a Stradivarius violin with a card that bore the inscription. I dreamed I spent a weekend at the millionaire's country house by the Hudson. A young girl in a blue skirt and white midi clapped her lily-white hands, and her voice trembling cried,
Bravo! Bravo!
What people now observe at home was the diligence with which I attended to my violin lessons. My aunt, who had come from the farm to join her children for the holidays, brought with her a maid-servant, and to the poor girl was given the chore of taking the money to the bakers for rolls and pandesal. I realized at once that it would be no longer becoming on my part to make these morning trips to the bakers. I could not thank my aunt enough. I began to chafe on being given other errands. Suspecting my violin to be the excuse, my aunt remarked,
What do you want to be a musician for? At parties, musicians always eat at last.
When I'm in the store while walking,
if I
I
nibbled
said,
away at one
"The bread is sold. How did it?"
Sorry, but the pandesal you wanted is not ready to sell. I'm sorry.
Okay, thanks sir.